Hi, I believe I'm live. Waiting for people to hop on. What day of the week is it? It's Wednesday. I don't know that I've done a Wednesday webinar ever. I've done webinars, but usually it's on like Monday or Tuesday. So yeah. Hopefully you guys are not too disappointed because usually Wednesday is Dr. McGrath, and I know he has big shoes to fill, you guys. So hopefully I do not disappoint. I will guarantee you one thing. I will not talk as fast as he can when he kind of mocks how OCD can kind of play out in the brain when he talks really fast. So we will not be doing that, but I will be answering your guys' questions that you're putting below. So I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. I'm not going in any particular order. So if you feel like I skipped over yours, I may be coming back. And yeah, I'll try to get to as many questions as I can. I really hope as you guys watch through this webinar that even if the question itself doesn't feel applicable to you, it probably is, just because OCD is treated very similarly no matter what the individual's worries are. So like I mentioned, if you're feeling like it's not really applicable to you, dive a little deeper because it probably is. And a lot of these skills and advice that I'm going to give probably applies across the board. So I guess I should introduce myself. I haven't been on one of the YouTube webinars in a while. Anyone that follows the Instagram page, I'm pretty frequent on there with maybe like little video clips, or sometimes I go live there as well. Yeah, but I haven't done one of these in a while, so I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to hang out. I have my hot cocoa. So if you guys don't have your favorite drink, you should go grab it. Probably anything but coffee, because then you wouldn't be able to sleep, but grab a nice warm drink. I'm always curious where people in the world are located. If you want to let me know where you live, I'd love to see it in the chat. And yeah, let's get started. All right. So we have a 3-part question. So I'll try to read through this. So I have relationship OCD for almost 3 months. After a shocking breakup with a close friend, I'm trying my best not to analyze, ruminate about the conflict anymore, as I have forgiven her. And still occasionally I get tempted to text her and let her know I'm not upset with her anymore. And if she wants, we can continue. Is that OCD? I doubt it is, as I think it's a good action to do, though I used to text her for 2 weeks after a fight and she only replied back. So I think this is a good question in the sense that it's really important for us to understand anything. When we have OCD, anything could be considered a compulsion. So the intention behind a person's behavior is really important. So a good example is, say I am scared to get in a car accident. And I promise this is going to relate back to your question. But say I'm scared to get into a car accident. And anytime I'm watching TV, if the news comes on and a clip of a car accident comes off, I immediately turn off the TV because it's just too hard to hear. It might bring up bad memories or make me feel really uncomfortable. So I just turn it off and I avoid it altogether. That would be considered a compulsion and part of OCD because it is an avoidance behavior that makes us feel better in the moment, but long-term does not help us address the issue at hand. It makes us feel more uncertain. It makes us feel more fearful. So the intention behind that behavior was to get rid of or to minimize discomfort, which signals that it was likely driven by OCD. Now, we could take that same example, and as the therapist, I might actually have someone watch clips of car accidents or news clips of car accidents to expose them to that if it's uncomfortable and they're avoiding it, right? But if I'm watching the car accidents to make myself feel better in the sense of, I want to know what are all the possibilities, what happens as a repercussion, were the people okay, what are all, to analyze, right? And so the intention behind the behavior, it's the same thing. The intention behind the behavior made it either a compulsion or an exposure. The intention behind the behavior indicated that it was either OCD or not OCD, right? So I think for you, looking behind the intention of the behavior, is it to get rid of discomfort? Is it to try to feel better in the moment? Is it to prevent some sort of fear from happening? If that is the case, it is likely fear-driven or OCD-driven. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay. Elijah says, I am a guy dealing with sexual orientation OCD. I have dealt with it before, but it didn't get this bad. I relapsed a month ago at first and was doubting if I was straight. We have another two-parter question, or an extra part question. Now I have lots of attraction to girls. It feels like I think maybe my mind is telling me that I can't be logically attracted to girls because we don't have the same body part. It's telling me I should be attracted to girls. And you feel stressed about it. Yeah, wow, that does sound stressful. Typically, that is what anxiety and OCD can yield for a lot of people, is that stress and anxiety. The excessiveness of the symptoms can make you feel like it's really disrupting your day. So definitely sorry to hear that you're feeling that way. I don't know that you necessarily asked a question, but kind of aired some grievances, which we definitely appreciate. And I guess like my best piece of advice here is to resist trying to figure out if you are attracted to women or men or what gender you're attracted to, which I know is easier said than done. But one way to do that would be to use what we call response prevention messages. So basically, it's acknowledging the uncertainty of anything, right? That really, at the end of the day, anything is possible. And so acknowledging that, like, yeah, maybe I'm not attracted to the sex that I think I'm attracted to. The other thing too is it sounds like you're not really engaging in your life, meaning you might physically be at a certain place or at a certain event or with a certain person, but mentally you might be ruminating and you might be not really present mentally, because you're doing things like checking, like, how do I feel? Like, do I find that person attractive? Do I not? What does that mean? And so it's really taking you out of the moment and actually getting you further and further away from the answer, right? Because the best way to figure out not only your sexual orientation, but really anything anyone on this call is trying to figure out, is to fully engage in your life. So I say this a lot with like relationship OCD too, is the person with relationship OCD is trying relentlessly hard to try to figure out if they like or love their partner enough, or if they're attracted to them enough, or they don't like them, right? They're trying so hard to figure out these things that is actually getting in the way of them experiencing those things, which would ultimately get them closest to the answer, right? We'll never know anything 100% certain, but the best way to figure out most things is to fully engage in life. So I anticipate, or I'm guessing that anxiety kind of wants you to sit in your place all day and just ruminate, maybe Google, think a lot about if you're attracted to men or women, and you're stalling your life, really. So my encouragement would be to get out and live life. Even though all those like background thoughts are there, that discomfort is there, it doesn't mean those things will go away. It just means that you continue on with your day and the things that you want to do, even though anxiety and OCD is telling you to stop everything that you're doing and try to figure out the answer to this. And I think that this is just really important, because I tell people all the time, we cannot get rid of the way we think or the way we feel or change it, right? And I think that's a big misconception, even in the therapy world, right? A lot of times, we might try to change the way we think, and hope that changes the way we feel. And I get the context behind that, but it's really difficult because we haven't actually successfully learned how to change the way we feel or think. And if any of us knew how to do that, no one would be on this webinar, and B, no one would ever feel crappy, right? We would always feel good all the time if we could control the way we feel. But we know that that is not possible. And so such a big part of treatment is accepting that you will have thoughts and feelings that you don't like. It is all about how you respond to the way you think and feel. And so oftentimes I notice that treatment winds up being more challenging if someone is trying to control the way they think or feel. And it can be very unconscious. Like a lot of times I catch my members, they're like unconsciously saying like, well, I was waiting to not feel sad. to do this, or I was waiting to not feel anxious, or like I didn't feel anxious and that was good, right? And so I think it's really important to catch those things, especially that last comment I said, like, I didn't feel anxious, so it went well. No, not necessarily, because if it went well because I wasn't anxious, that must inherently mean that if I'm anxious, that's bad, right? And as soon as something's bad, we want to get rid of it. And so I think a lot of ERP is about creating a different relationship with our thoughts and our emotions. So not trying to change the way we think and not trying to change the way we feel, but learning to respond to those things differently. So at the end of the day, there will still always be uncertainty and discomfort. It's just about learning to respond to it differently. Also, I feel like I should briefly go over what ERP is. I'm sure a lot of you guys on this call know, but I think like as I'm talking about it, I'm like, I wonder if maybe people on here don't know the whole idea behind ERP. So I'll briefly go over it. So ERP, exposure response prevention, is a form of therapy that's actually the number one treatment for OCD and a lot of anxiety disorders. The cool thing about ERP is that it's a very action oriented. So a lot of times when you think of going to a therapist, you think I'm going to sit in an office and I'm going to talk to my therapist like on a couch for 60 minutes about the way I feel and why I think I am the way I am and my past and all that. In ERP therapy, we actually are doing more than we're talking in session. And the reason that is because the place in the brain actually where anxiety and fear lives doesn't understand language. And so a person with OCD or anxiety going to talk therapy can be really detrimental because you can't talk yourself out of being scared. And anyone on this webinar who's gone to talk therapy and has OCD might quickly tell you like it wasn't effective. It might have felt better like in the moment, but overall it wasn't effective. And that's because you can't like logic or talk your way out of being scared. That's why a lot of times you'll see people, even people who don't have OCD, right? We all have fears. Most things that we have feared, we've had to like physically show our way out of. We couldn't just like convince ourselves out of it. So with ERP, we're literally exposing the individual to the thing that they might be avoiding or the thing they're scared to do. And we're helping them essentially prevent or resist the way they typically respond, which is what we call the compulsion. And so basically we're reteaching them that they can handle uncomfortable things and they don't have to do that safety-seeking behavior, which is another cool side note. I think it's interesting to understand like how OCD functions in the brain. So we want to remember that our brain doesn't actually want to feel anxious. It kind of has that internal thermostat, meaning you can't feel anxious for the rest of your life 24/7. And so the brain will have its own like homeostasis. It will come back down. But the issue is someone with OCD keeps interrupting that natural regulation by doing their compulsion. And so it actually extends the amount of time they're feeling anxious. So typically during exposures, for example, if someone's feeling anxious for an extended period of time, it's typically because they're actually doing a compulsion. And if they're not feeling anxious, it's usually because they're not always, but usually it's because they're actually resisting their compulsions. So basically, exposure response prevention is exposing the individual to the thing that they're scared of over and over and over again and teaching them that they can handle it. Teaching them that they can manage, and oftentimes teaching them that scary thing that they thought was going to happen either didn't happen or it did happen and they figured it out and they were able to manage it. So really cool therapy, number one treatment for OCD. If you are looking for ERP therapy, we have tons of therapists waiting to see you guys. So you can always visit the website, treatmyocd.com, and there's a link where you can sign up for a free 15-minute phone consult and they can link you with a provider. So we see everyone in all 50 states, UK, Australia, Canada. So give us a call. All right. Alex and Lewis, hopefully I'm saying that right. Having a real bad anxiety for no reason, but feeling like the anxiety is bringing on the intrusive thoughts instead of the other way around. Is that normal? Well, first off, sorry that you're not feeling very good. Anxiety is never a fun emotion to have, but it is an emotion that we all have. So I think that that's important to mention. It sounds like you're trying to figure out why you feel anxious, which I think can be a really slippery slope because you're worrying about why you're worrying or you're ruminating on why you're ruminating. So it's a little like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which oftentimes OCD is. The very thing the person with OCD is trying to avoid is actually exacerbated by their OCD. So a clear example is someone with contamination OCD, for example, might wash their hands to the point where their hands are cracked and dry, and there's like, yeah, they're cracked, right? The thing they were trying to avoid is actually now a breeding ground for germs, right? And so it sounds like you're trying to figure out why you feel anxious, which I get to a certain extent, right? It's not a good feeling, but you would never know 100% why you feel anxious. Worrying about why you feel anxious is actually only prolonging it because you're worrying about why you're worrying. So I wonder if you went on with your night, even though you're not feeling the best, with the anxiety kind of like background music. So I think of intrusive thoughts, feelings, sensations as background music. Hopefully I don't offend anyone with this, but I'm not a fan of country music. So like my background music, I refer to like country music. So those are the thoughts I don't really like having. It's like that country music playing in the background. And the thing with the music is I can't necessarily stop my day to go try to change the song because I don't like country music. So the real difference between someone who has OCD versus someone who doesn't is the person who has OCD is relentlessly hard trying to get up and change the music, and they're missing out on life, right? Because they're just convinced, OCD has convinced them that they can change the song, that they can prevent it from happening, and it will make the discomfort go away. The person without OCD kind of moves on with their day. They still feel anxious. They still hate the background song, right? I don't like that country music, but I'm still in this webinar with you guys. I'm still going to, eat dinner. I'm still going to go do my workout, even though country song is playing all day. So it's kind of like that. It doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean you love it. It doesn't mean you prefer that you feel that way. It just means that you're not trying to get rid of it. Typically, when we try to get rid of something, it actually only emphasizes it. And I know that can feel like, but that's just so hard. Yeah, it is hard. However, it also feels hard right now. And I always point that out to individuals because the very thing that OCD is promising you, OCD is saying, hey, do this, 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 and this, so then you don't feel uncomfortable. But then I always point out to my member, you're sitting here with me for a reason. You feel really uncomfortable. Even though you've followed all of OCD's orders, you're sitting here with me. So what if I told you that I can't necessarily get rid of your discomfort for you or give you any more certainty, but I can give you back the time and energy and maybe like the relationships, the jobs, the self-care that OCD has cost you. I can give you all that back, but I can't give you back, any like guarantee that you won't feel uncomfortable. I wish I knew how to do that, but I can't. So it's about recognizing that the outcome is always the same. You will always have uncertainty and discomfort. Anxiety tries to lie and say you can minimize that or get rid of it by doing the compulsions. And that's just one of the many, many holes in its logic because, again, you're still feeling uncomfortable. I think, too, with ERP treatment, it's really important to understand that we're exchanging short-term relief for long-term relief and short-term discomfort. So in the interim, like it's not uncommon for people, for example, to feel a little bit more uncomfortable initially because they're basically learning a new way of responding. So learning anything new feels uncomfortable. And we're kind of taking away what I call like the fuzzy blanket, right? The thing that, makes you feel better in the moment, we're taking that away. So it does feel uncomfortable. And so it is uncomfortable in the interim, but overall, it will increase your confidence in yourself. It will increase your ability to handle hard things, and it will give you back so much time and energy. It will never take away the uncertainty or the discomfort. You will only learn how to respond to it differently. And I think there's a lot of power in that. Like, I think of a lot of my members that I've been seeing for an extended period of time that are in more like the maintenance phase. I love when they come to session and they tell me like, Dina, I had like a really anxiety provoking month, but it wasn't that bad because I responded to it differently, right? They don't say it in those words, but essentially what they're telling me is like, I had this, and this come up. But instead of doing this, and this compulsions, instead of doing my compulsions, I resisted my compulsions and I didn't try to get rid of the way I felt. I didn't try to figure out the way I felt. I just let it be that background country song and I moved on. And what do I know? It kind of went away on its own, right? And that's kind of the good and the bad news. It sounds corny because it's, what is it? Like some sort of like inspirational quote, but nothing lasts forever, right? That's the good and the bad news. And so again, back to like that homeostasis, like we have to teach ourselves we can handle hard things by not trying to always intervene with something that we feel like is going to fix it. So yeah, and just this side note, just because you feel something doesn't mean that it's true. And that's the interesting thing I say sometimes as a therapist. I always explain to my members when I say this, but sometimes I don't care how you feel because how you feel has steered you into so many compulsions. Because we feel a certain way doesn't mean that now our behaviors have to be dictated off that feeling, right? And so again, we do not change the way we think or the way we feel. We change the way we respond to that, both of those things. Whew. I'm gonna take a sip of my hot cocoa. I was gonna put, I got this coconut whipped cream, guys. I was so excited about it. I wanted to put some on this, but then I was like, when I go to drink, I'd probably have like a whipped cream mustache, which would not be a good look. But who knows, now maybe I'll just have a hot cocoa mustache. Okay. All right. Is it bad to end a compulsion by doing it one last time? And is letting OCD choose a day in which I start ignoring it also bad? These are the moments where I wish I could like talk to you guys because I would love to hear, like I would challenge, if this was my member, I would challenge my member to say, what do you think? Do you think it's preferable to do one last compulsion, one last time? Actually, I would love to see in the comments below. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. What do you guys think? Do you think Gaga Pod is saying, is it bad to end a compulsion by doing it one last time? What do you guys think? Do you think that's preferable or no? Can you guys give me like a thumbs up? Please give me something in the chat, like thumbs up, thumbs down, good or bad. Let's drum it up. Okay, we got bad. It's fueling the OCD. What else? What do you guys think? Is ending a compulsion by doing it one last time? Gaga Pod, I would love to hear what your thoughts are. What do you think? I hope he or she is here or they are here. We got some more. Yes, it's bad. It's fueling OCD. Bad. Yes. So the reason I say this is because something OCD is notorious for is doubting. I mean, you guys know this already, doubting you, right? And so a lot of times what happens is when I'm teaching someone ERP, the amount of reassurance that they ask me for on things that I know they know the answer to, right? I'm not going to answer that for you because that would literally feed into, and I am going to answer the question for all intents and purposes, but I'm trying to make a point. It only feeds into the doubt, right? If every time you ask a question that you technically know the answer to, but you just want to ask me to make sure, right? How many times do you want to just make sure? It's feeding into the doubt, right? Versus if I put it back on you, like, well, what do you think? Each time you choose to answer it, then you're increasing your confidence in yourself. Again, OCD doubts your ability to like gauge things. And the irony of it is a lot of the things that people are asking me to answer for them, I know even less than they know, right? Like something about their life, like I don't know. And the fact that there's so much onus on maybe someone else giving them reassurance or telling them the answer to something when they're not even trusting themselves. So my first piece of advice here would be trust yourself. Like, what do you think? Do you think, ending a compulsion by doing another one is a good or a bad thing. I'm also not a fan of the word good and bad, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But yes, we wouldn't want to necessarily do one last compulsion. I think that's a very tempting way for OCD to try to climb back on top. Just do one, right? When you do one, it then increasingly becomes harder to not do the second one. And then because that's hard, maybe you do wind up doing the second compulsion, and now that's even harder. So now you're doing 3, and then now you've spiraled and you're doing compulsions for the next hour, right? And that's because there's a few things. OCD is never satisfied. So you can do one compulsion and be like, I'm just going to do one, right? It's like you do one and OCD is like, say you go check the door, right? Just check it once. And then you go back and like, but what if I didn't check it right? Or like, what if I checked and I think I saw it, but I didn't see it right? So let me just go back and check one more time. And so each time you go back and you check, because remember, you can't logic yourself out of fear. You can only show yourself out of fear. So each time you go back and you check, you actually strengthen the fear. So each time you do a compulsion, OCD is like eating it up, right? Mwahaha. It'd be like, I love donuts. So like, it would be like how fast, like someone who loves food, like me eating donuts, that'd be like OCD eating it up, right? So I really can't take myself anywhere. I don't know why I compared that to donuts, but you guys get what I mean. The more you do the behaviors, the more the fear increases, the more doubt you have, and the harder it is to resist your compulsion. So doing it one last time is a really slippery slope. So there's that. And then the other part of your question is letting OCD choose a day. Again, I would put that back on you. What do you think? Do you think that it's preferable for OCD to run the show? Because that's what you're asking me. Can OCD run the show for me? What do you guys think? Do you think OCD should run the show, or do you think you should run the show? And for that one, I think I'm going to leave up to you guys to answer, because I think that one you guys all got. I don't know all of you on here, but I think you guys got that one. All right. I lost my spot because I had to do that little interactive activity with you guys. All right. Okay. I like this question. Courtney, is these webinars reassurance? That's the reason I like this question, is because my last answer was a little bit of me trying not to give reassurance, right? Yeah, I think, again, to my very first question that I answered on here, anything can be a compulsion, meaning anything can be reassurance if, again, the intention behind the behavior is to get rid of discomfort. So if I'm frantically waiting for this 8 p.m. webinar to start with Madina, which I'm sure no one was doing, but if I'm frantically waiting, just eagerly waiting, because I just feel like once Madina answers my question, I'll feel better and I'll know the answer and I can just have some relief. Or like, I want to go on, I want to check to see if other people have these fears and like if I'm normal or if I'm crazy, and then I'll just feel better. Or maybe it'll make my OCD go away and it'll prevent like any sort of fear I have from happening, and I'll feel better. So if that's the reason you're here, yeah, maybe that could very well be a compulsion. If you're here because you value your mental health and you wanted to be here to support yourself, a loved one, other people on this webinar, that's a very different reason. Now, I don't want you guys to go overanalyze, oh my God, why am I here? Because I just feel like that's what OCD does, right? Oh my God, what if I am here and it's a compulsion? At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong decision. There's just decisions. I always tell people that, but also whatever decision you choose, be fully engaged in it. So if you're here right now on this webinar, and I'm gonna watch the count on the top, because there's 98 of you here right now. So if you're here on this webinar, I want you to fully engage with me as best as you can, even though maybe you have other anxieties going on, you're feeling anxious, maybe your heart's racing, you have some physical signs of anxiety. Maybe you are here because it's a compulsion. I don't know. I don't want you to ruminate now on it, wondering if it is or it isn't. You're here Let's fully engage. Let's be present. It's not right or wrong. And it's the same way if you decide not to come, right? Maybe you decide that you're going to go get dinner with a friend, but while you're at dinner, you're like, oh my God, I really should have went to the webinar. Like my mental health's not doing the best. And like, that probably would have been way better if I went, right? And you're not present with your friend. So if you choose not to come, be fully engaged with where you're at, at the webinar. So when you're not at the webinar. So yeah, good question. Again, come back to intention behind behavior. I think the other thing that's important here too is no one's perfect. So the goal of treatment is never perfection. And I know you all logically know that, but I want you to make sure your behaviors are aligned with that logic. So that means that you will always at times do compulsive like behavior. Realistically, someone who doesn't have OCD does compulsive like behavior. And the reason I say this is because the goal is not that you're perfectly making these decisions. Like sometimes you might do something to get rid of discomfort. Sometimes you might do something to feel like you're preventing a fear from happening. Like that is going to happen from time to time. However, we do want to turn the volume down on that. We want to make sure that it's not excessive. We want to make sure that it's not time consuming. So those are kind of the constraints we're looking at. A lot of times I think there's this expectation that a lot of individuals place on themselves that like, oh my God, like I was doing so well. And then I did this compulsion and now they're beating themselves up and now they're even more stressed. So then it's even harder to resist the compulsions and then it snowballs all into the other direction. So it's just really important to be compassionate with yourself on the journey and to recognize that perfection is not the goal and that there's just so much trying to figure things out. So even though some of you might be here based on your values, some of you might be here based on your fears, I'm less concerned about that. I'm more concerned that you're fully engaged in trying your best to pay attention than trying to figure out if you're here for the wrong or the right reasons. So hopefully that makes sense. We went down about 10 people. So maybe some people were like, oh crap, this is a compulsion. I'm going to peace out. So maybe they'll be back. All right. Let's see. Okay. Scott says, hi, Madina. Hey, Scott. I have relationship OCD. I attempted to show my significant other, I think is what you're saying there, affection recently and was politely rebuffed. My significant other is very affectionate, but even one small rejection triggers me. How do I best handle my fears of being alone or rejected? So yeah, anytime we fear something, the best way to handle or to manage that is to actually expose ourselves to it. So I would expose yourself to situations where you are alone. I would expose yourself to situations where, so actually this is interesting. Everyone on this call is exposed to their fear, whether they want to be or not. Yes, we do want to take it a step further and maybe purposely expose ourselves. So maybe purposely go to dinner alone, or maybe purposefully like be in a separate room than they are in. So you can do that, but there's also going to be inherently things that we're exposed to that scare us that we don't do on purpose. So it's always the response prevention piece that's important because you're exposed whether you want to be or not. Now, when you're alone, the key is to make sure to be fully present with being alone versus maybe ruminating on your partner. What does it mean that I'm alone? Am I going to be this way for forever? Do I like this? Do I not like this? Am I ever going to be able to handle this, right? All that thought that swirls around in your head, trying your best to resist that, right? And so the key here is to recognize there's a huge difference between thought and thinking. And I know I've talked about this on the Instagram page before, but I'm going to say it again. Thought is what pops in. So like, what if I'm alone for forever? That thought we cannot control. As I mentioned earlier, we cannot change the thoughts we have, or we cannot change the feelings that we have. But everything that comes after the initial thought that pops in, everything that you're conjuring up, everything that you're putting effort into creating, that is called thinking. And that is what we do have control over. So when I have the thought of what if I'm alone for forever, instead of going down the rabbit hole, I can respond by saying, maybe, I might be. That might happen. I don't know. My favorite is to just kind of shrug, like, maybe. And then maybe the thought pops in again, right? And you shrug again. So it's not something that you like develop overnight. It's definitely a skill that you learn over a long period of time. Is just, again, responding to your thoughts and the way you feel differently. It doesn't mean when you're alone, you have to try to make yourself feel happy, right? You might feel lonely. You might feel sad. You might feel depressed. You might feel anxious. So same thing with not trying to change the way we think. We're not trying to change the way we feel in that situation either. Let's be honest, all of us have on this call, all of us have preferences. Some of us like alone time and prefer it. And some of us like social time and prefer social time. Again, that's not a bad or a wrong way of being. It's just how we are personally. So yeah, definitely exposing yourself to situations where you're alone and not trying to figure it out, not trying to change it, not trying to get rid of it. Anything that you're doing in those moments to make yourself feel better. So like, if, when your partner, wasn't reciprocating that act of affection, maybe you found yourself reassurance seeking or Googling to see what it meant or ruminating on it, like all those things, working on resisting, right? So not going on Google, not asking for that reassurance, and maybe continuing to watch the movie that you guys are watching, even though maybe you're feeling pretty anxious about it. So yeah, continuing, that'll be the theme of the night, continuing on with your day, even though scary and anxiety provoking things happen. Hopefully that helps, Scott. Sometimes I'm on here and I'm like, not used to talking a ton because as a therapist, we usually we're listening or we're like guiding people through exercises. So sometimes when I talk for an extended period of time, I think my body's like, whoa, what are you doing? Take it a little out of breath. Okay. I think that's also, it's just fitting to talk about for a second, physical sensations. Because I could take my out of breathness and I could really spiral that if I wanted to right now, right? So I could be like, oh my God, why am I out of breath? I wonder if people are noticing. Maybe I'm nervous. Now my heart's starting to race. I'm like, what does that mean? And like, what if I have a panic attack in front of everyone on this webinar right now? And like, maybe I have to like escape off of it and then everyone, right? I could spiral that real quick. But again, and I'll be transparent here, I don't have OCD. The difference is I feel out of breath and I'm just kind of like, I don't know. It could be because I'm not used to talking. I don't know. Maybe I am nervous. I don't know, right? Maybe I will have a panic attack. Who knows? But I'm not going to try to figure it out because it's really important to me to answer these questions for you guys. So it's a good example of acting out of the things you value over the things you fear. And I say that all the time because I think that's just important. It's a good guide to making decisions. What am I scared of and what's important to me? And let me try to make the decision or go in the direction of what's important to me. All right. Hi, Vic. He says, I have obsessive thoughts over health where I worry I have something or might get something when I don't have it. I also obsess and feel anxious before client meetings because I worry about how they will react to my advice or knowledge. So yeah, health anxiety can be a real thing and lends well to what I was just talking to you all about with the physical sensation. So typically when someone has a lot of health anxiety, they're overestimating the, I guess, dangerousness. I think that's the word. We're going to go with it. The dangerousness of physical sensation. So if we think about it on a daily basis, we all have multiple physical sensations that we could misinterpret, right? But again, the difference between someone who has OCD or health anxiety and someone who doesn't is the person with health anxiety or OCD will feel the sensation and they'll need to figure out why it's there or how to get rid of it. And then that often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and actually increases other physical sensations and sometimes does lead to panic or like the person visiting the ER or being stuck on Google for 3 hours trying to figure out what terminal cancer they have, right? And so a lot of that, like tackling that fear will be resisting all of those compulsions and acknowledging, yeah, like at any moment, any of us could have some serious health condition. Like that is how it works. And if any of us could prevent health conditions from occurring, no one would be sick, right? And unfortunately, that's just not how it works. And again, if we were to really boil your fear down to the core, it's probably that like you're scared that you won't be able to live your life, or that maybe you'll pass away, or that you'll be given this diagnosis that won't like allow you to live your life. But I wonder if all the compulsions that OCD or anxiety has you doing, or the behaviors anxiety has you doing, is actually causing you to miss out on your life. And it's kind of like a hypothetical death, right? Like you're not being present in your life because you're trying to figure out if you're sick. And so instead of trying to figure out if we're sick, I think it's Dr. McGrath that actually says this, like, can we just party like a rock star and like live life, even though maybe any of us could die at any moment? Yeah, so there's that first part. And then with the anxiety about the client meetings, it sounds like I'm going to guess, ruminating on like what people might say and like what you would say in response to what they're saying, and just trying to like predict the conversation, which is overwhelmingly tiring. And as actually what's making you feel anxious before the meetings. I think the interesting part here, again, another example of a self-fulfilling prophecy, is when people are feeling like socially anxious and they're trying to figure out what to say next, they're not paying attention to the other person because they're trying to figure out what to say next. And then when the person stops talking, they either say something that's completely unrelated, or they don't know what to say because the person, when they were talking, they weren't listening to them, right? So again, it's trying your best to fully engage with the person, even though maybe you're feeling anxious, even though they might react poorly to your advice, to your knowledge. And yeah, like, and I think the other thing too is to just ask yourself, like, what would be so bad about that? Like, Vic, what would be so bad if someone I'm guessing you're fearing their reaction is like negative. Like, what would be so bad about someone reacting negatively to you? And I think that's an important question. And again, you guys can kind of frame it in your own fears. Like, what would be so bad if I got sick? Or what would be so bad if, I got into a car accident? Or what would be so bad if my friend was upset with me? What would be so bad if I wasn't actually attracted to my partner? I think those are important questions, because usually the thing that you're fearing has probably already happened in some capacity. Meaning, like if I feared that I wasn't truly attracted to my partner, then that means we'd go through a breakup, right? And most of us probably have been through a breakup on here, right? Or been through some sort of heartbreak, right? And so it's same thing here, right? I'm guessing that maybe at some point someone hasn't liked your advice or your knowledge, but you figured it out, you managed it, and you weren't able to successfully avoid it. Just like OCD saying, or anxiety, like, hey, do these behaviors so you don't have to feel like people are reacting poorly to your advice. But I'm guessing that happens from time to time anyway. So I'd rather save you the time and energy preparing for that meeting, trying to figure out how to like minimize that from happening, and like give you back that time and energy. And yeah, recognize that you'll be able to handle it. You'll be able to manage it. You probably won't like it, but you'll figure it out. And that's, coming back continuously to trusting yourself. All right. I'm going to take another sip of my hot cocoa. I don't think it's probably hot anymore at this point. All right. Sorry, I'm just getting a lot of thank yous. Oh, there's all the poll questions came in. Pretty much everyone said that it was not good to do one last compulsion to get rid of compulsion. So good to hear. Good to hear. It's a trap. Dominic says it's a trap. Yes, it is a trap, because literally once you do one, it's harder to not do another one. And then once you do that one, it's even harder. It is a trap. And OCD is a tricky disorder. Because it's always trying to get back on top. That one last time always leads to another time and another. Yes. And it's temporary. That relief you get, I think that's an important thing to remember. That relief you get is temporary. And doing the compulsions, especially I see this too when people have been doing compulsions for a while, is a lot of times they don't actually report any relief from them anymore. And I would love to hear if anyone on this webinar feels that way, that like their compulsions used to kind of give them a sense of relief and now they just like stress them out. And I really think that's because you're just like doing so many of them, and it's like you just it's not giving you the same relief, or you have to do more because your tolerance gets higher. It's like drinking, right? So I might feel good after one beer or one drink and I kind of feel that little buzz, but then once my tolerance builds, maybe I need 3 or 4 to get that same feeling. And OCD kind of functions the same way. So it's very addictive. It's kind of like, and this is a good reminder on like the difference between OCD and anxiety. So I think of it on like a terms of like a threshold. So if this is really high anxiety up here and this is low anxiety, someone with generalized anxiety usually kind of just like lives up here. The person doesn't necessarily do any like compulsions to bring them back down. Whereas like a person with OCD will like be down here, they might get triggered and their anxiety goes up and they do their compulsion. Say like they wash their hands. I'll use the most generic example. Wash their hands, they'll feel better because anxiety said like, yes, like you did it. And like now you're certain that your hands are clean, but then you get triggered again, right? And you're like, but what if when I was washing my hands, I accidentally knocked the back of my hand on the faucet and now it's dirty again. So then my anxiety goes back up and then OCD comes in and says like that thermostat that you've been like relying on doesn't work. You have to do your compulsion. And so like do that thing that made you feel better. Remember when you washed your hands last time and it felt better? And so then you do the compulsion and anxiety comes down. And then anxiety again says, next time you're triggered, remember that thing you did? Do it again. And it just becomes harder and harder and harder to resist. The interesting, the cool, and the amazing part is it works the same way in reverse. So the more you resist, the lower over time the anxiety is, the lower the fear is, and the easier, not saying it's easy, but the easier it is to resist compulsions. And then because the fear goes down, you're feeling less anxious. And because you're feeling less anxious, you feel less compelled to do the compulsion. And because you're doing less of the compulsion, there's less fear. And because there's less fear, then there's less intrusive thoughts, right? It's all like, it can go right in the same direction. So yes, long story short, the way you behave is either feeding or diminishing the anxiety. So I think it's always really important to pay attention to the way you're behaving, the way you're physically functioning in your day, because that's what OCD can hear. It can hear your actions. And that does include rumination, because ruminating is an action. All right. We have so many answers that came in for the poll after the fact. Maybe there's a lag. I don't know. Okay. Defining good and bad gets tricky. Yes, I agreed, Savannah. That's why I said I don't like the words good and bad. I like the word preferable. Or I like to think of things in terms of like values and fears again, because there's no good or bad decisions. There's just decisions, and there's decisions I can make rooted in fear or driven by fear, or I can make decisions based on things that are important to me. And I think when we make decisions based on what's important to us, we can bring a lot more we can just have a higher quality of life because we're living our life. We're not letting a disorder run it. So good points. Okay. Life with Kaz and Crew. Oh, I like that. It's like a little, I feel like you probably can't say that more than 10 times in a row, but I like that. Okay. So Life with Kaz and Crew, and hopefully I'm saying it right. Why do the urges literally feel like you're about to act on the thought? I'm new to this and I'm very scared. I don't want the urge because I don't want to ever act on the thoughts. Yeah. So it feels really real. It feels really scary. It feels really, possible that you could act on an urge. If it didn't feel that way, then this disorder would not exist, because it has to be convincing. If it weren't, you would just be like, I'm not going to do that, right? So the best way to address that is to get real acclimated to that feeling of fear that you're having from doing the urge. So whatever it is that you're feeling, an urge is coming up. So maybe, I don't know, since I don't know exactly what you're talking about, say I'm scared, I have the urge to take a knife and stab someone. So I would maybe work and if you're not seeing a therapist, I would highly recommend that. And you guys can work on like a hierarchy together. But I might start, and again, this is just based on a general theme, by just like looking at a knife, and that might provoke some feelings. And then maybe I'm standing closer to the knife, like the butcher block or whatever. And then maybe I'm picking up a knife. And so basically the reason that we're doing this is because we want to expose ourselves to the feeling of the urge. So the reason the urge probably feels so like real is because you've probably been avoiding anything that provokes the urge. So the more you avoid something, the scarier it feels, the more fearful it feels. Because again, the behavior is either increasing the fear or decreasing the fear. So if my behavior is avoidance, that behavior says, that's not safe, that's bad, that's scary, that's negative, and you must be a danger. So if you want the fear or the urge to feel more manageable, then you will have to continue to expose yourself to situations where that urge comes up. You'll notice that over time, the urge eventually goes away, but you will have to continue to expose yourself. There's usually a lot of reassurance, like self-reassurance or seeking reassurance when it comes to urges. So like, no, I would never do that. I would never stab anyone. Like, I know I wouldn't do that. So I might have someone say, there's a chance I could do that. That is quite possible. They might ask other people, do you think I would ever do something like that? So resisting those things will be really important too. But ultimately, it has to feel real or you wouldn't be so scared. If it didn't feel real, it wouldn't be a disorder. So that is why it feels very real. But again, I'm going to come back to just because something feels really real doesn't mean it's true. But we could test it out, you guys. So what we could do right now is we could all feel like millionaires. That would be fun, right? If we could like, because basically when you have OCD, when you feel something, you feel like it's going to happen. So let's test it out. I want us to all just like, for a moment, feel like millionaires, okay? Everyone feel like a millionaire, okay? Or you guys might be like, that one's so silly, Madina. Let's all feel like we're going to do something really crazy right now. No, that's too vague. What about this? What if I feel like I'm going to take this hot chocolate and I'm just going to throw the cup at the computer screen right now? I could feel that way. But doesn't mean that I'm actually going to do it. Doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen. And just because we feel like a millionaire doesn't mean that we are. And again, in the comments below, if anyone just became a millionaire in the last 5 minutes, let me know and give me some of the powers, right? And same thing, life with Kaz and Crew. Whatever you're feeling like you might do, let's test it out. Put yourself in a situation where you feel like you could act on the urge, and let's see. Bring it on, OCD. Just because I feel that way, does that mean it happens? Let me see. Because again, you can only show yourself out of fear. You can't talk yourself out of fear. So convincing yourself you will or won't do the urge is just not going to help. Alrighty. Oh my God. Wow. It's already 8:55. It would not be a webinar, you guys, with me if I didn't comment on my bedtime, right? I love coming on here so much that even though I go to bed at like 9:30, I still like to come on here, but I do have an early bedtime, because sleep, this is a side note, but sleep is really important. And it definitely impacts OCD and impacts our mental health, right? When we're feeling extra tired and fatigued, a lot harder to resist some of those compulsions. All right. C. Delozer? It's not really a question, but welcome to your first webinar. I'm glad that you're here and I'm glad that it's helpful. I have a lot of highs. Hey guys. Hey Steven. Harshita. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Harshita. I feel like I'm saying it right. I hope I am. Hi. Okay. Chelsea says, I've been having OCD with buying the perfect things for my home, phone case, dog beds, and collars. I can't stop thinking about constantly making my aesthetic correct. How do I stop? Well, Chelsea, I hope you're still here right now. And anyone else who might be struggling with the same thing, I challenge you right now. And I'm going to give you about a minute. Something that you might have been avoiding buying or taking an extensive amount of time buying, like a phone case. I want you to buy one right now online. Just buy it. I know it sounds crazy, but I want to show you versus convince you that you can do it. So again, Chelsea, if you're here, I would encourage you right now, let's practice. And I want you to maybe buy that dog bed or that phone case. And I think that this is important because it's really easy, even for an ERP/OCD specialist, to get sucked into compulsions with you guys. I'm like, what is that? Mr. I can't remember. It was like that cartoon when we were younger, the guy and like Mr. Inspector Gadget. Is that it? I don't know, but it's irrelevant. I feel like an inspector a lot of times when I'm in. Now we know it's getting close to my bedtime because I'm becoming delusional. But sometimes I feel like an inspector because OCD has so many tricks. OCD will try to get me to ruminate in session with you guys by trying to figure stuff out, right? The other day I had someone in session trying to get me to figure out with them when the best time to do their homework was. I was like, look, we need to stop and I need you to go get your homework and we need to do the homework right now, right? Or like anytime you're talking a lot in session, your therapist should definitely be catching it, but also hold yourself accountable. There should not be a ton of talking in session. There should be a ton of doing. So Chelsea, I would suggest that you do set time limits on buying these things, right? Like a minute could be, doesn't mean you'll have to buy everything always in 1 minute, but, work on buying things quicker. Maybe work on buying something that you purposely think is the wrong color, right? Maybe you think the phone case, like you don't know exactly what color phone case you get, but you know you don't want purple. So maybe you purposely buy the purple phone case. And then I would bring you back to that question, like what would be so bad about not getting the perfect phone case? And let's test out the hypothesis. You might be like, well, I'll just be so distracted because the phone case is not the perfect one. And then it'll be hard for me to concentrate. So let's test it out. Let's get the purple phone case and let's try our best to fully engage in life and see if the phone case really does derail everything. So I would say come back next week and let me know, but it will probably be Dr. McGrath. But yeah. Good luck. Good luck. I hope you got the case. All right. I will do one more question. I don't know why I'm picturing all you guys going, encore, encore. Pretty sure no one's doing that, but we're just going to do that because that'll be what'll hype me up to do one more question. Okay. All right, let me see. There's one person who said they really want their question answered at the top. I'm going to try to find it. Play the elevator music. Do, 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 do. Okay. Right. Tariq. Hope you're still here because you said you really wanted me to answer your question. So I got you. Okay. Do I control my brain or am I my brain? And what if I lost that and I can't move or talk anymore? My main theme is schizophrenia OCD. It's been 4 years and you're in Syria living in Dubai. Oh, I wonder what time it is there. I feel like it's late or really early or something, but welcome. Yeah. So let's talk about that. So fear of like developing schizophrenia usually comes first off with a lot of like physical sensations and misinterpreting them. So again, there can be a lot of like, oh my God, like, did I really see that? Or like, am I delusional? Or did that person actually say what I thought they said? And so just constantly analyzing and checking like physical sensations or things that are going on around you, trying to like test reality essentially. So I would work on addressing that by exposing yourself to physical sensations that you might be misinterpreting. So we call these interoceptives. This is good for anyone who has like panic-like symptoms. So doing things that actually make your heart rate go faster, like exercising, for example, holding your breath, spinning around in circles, staring at one spot on the wall until it kind of feels like everything's kind of like a dreamlike state. So re-exposing yourself to those things over and over and over again to help you address those misinterpretations of physical sensations. I would stop trying to figure out if you control your brain or if your brain is controlling you. I don't know. I don't know anyone knows that answer, but that can just lead you down like a whole slippery slope of trying to check like what's going on. Is my brain controlling me? Am I controlling my brain? What's going on? Right. And it's just all this rumination. Same thing with like fearing like life's like existential OCD, kind of like if life is a simulation. Like, I don't know, maybe we could all be in a simulation right now, but whew, I don't want to figure that out. So I'm just going to like hang out here and who knows, maybe it's a simulation. So, but yeah. And then what if you lost the ability to move or talk to anyone? Like, yeah, that would be scary for sure. So it makes sense why we might worry about that. But is worrying about if you won't be able to talk or move getting you any closer to the answer? And would it prevent it from happening? Does thinking about something prevent something from happening? And I want everyone to like ask that to themselves. Just thinking about whatever I'm worried about, does that prevent it from happening? And most of you are going to say, of course not, Madina. But do your actions align with that? Are your actions aligning with that logic that you can't prevent something from happening, but then you're doing everything that would indicate you can? So if your actions are indicating that you can prevent bad things from happening, remember, that's what OCD is listening to. So you have to address the actions. So if you're on the internet Googling signs of schizophrenia, early signs of schizophrenia, right? You could sit here and logically tell me, Madina, I know I can't prevent it from happening, but your behavior says it can, right? You're trying to figure out if you're going to get it or not. So behavior is saying, yes, you can. OCD is like, mwahaha, like, yeah. So just make sure you're resisting those behaviors. And I hope that that's helpful. And yeah, so, whoo, that went by really fast, you guys. I had so much fun. I hope you guys did too. As always, like I mentioned in the middle of the webinar, if you are feeling like you're struggling with OCD, there is help. There's effective help, and you can visit treatmyocd.com to get signed up with one of our therapists. We're treating other disorders too. So like scoriation, hoarding, other disorders as well. So you can always call and inquire if you're not quite sure. We're accepting a lot of different insurances as well. So definitely visit our website. You can follow us on Instagram, Treat My OCD. If I know some of you on here, I think, follow me on Instagram too, but if you want to follow me too, my handle is mental health _Madina _. I try to post like little reels and stuff. I'm definitely not a pro at it, but would love if you guys came over and said hi and updated me on maybe a suggestion that you implemented. But always good to hear from you guys. Always fun to hang out with you guys. And I truly hope everyone has a wonderful night. And I just want to remind you guys, you really can handle hard things. It just feels like you can't sometimes, but keep doing the hard things, keep showing up, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.